There was an old man who lived by a forest. As he grew older and older, he started losing his hair, until one day on his deathbed, he was completely bald. That day, he called his children to a meeting. He said, "Look at my hair. It used to be so magnificent, but it's completely gone now. My hair can't be saved. But look outside at the forest. It's such a lovely forest with so many trees, but sooner or later they'll all be cut down and this forest will look as bald as my hair. What I want you to do," the man continued, "is every time a tree is cut down or dies, plant a new one in my memory. Tell your descendants to do the same. It shall be our family's duty to keep this forest strong." And so they did. Each time the forest lost a tree, the children replanted one. And so did their children, and their children after them. And for centuries, the forest remained as lush and pretty as it once was, all because of one man and his receding hairline. A mother and her young daughter were visiting New York City. The mother was trying to hail a cab when her daughter noticed several wildly dressed women who were loitering on a nearby street corner. The mother finally hailed her cab and they both climbed in, at which point the young daughter asked, "Mommy, what are all those ladies waiting for by that corner?" The mother replies, "Those ladies are waiting for their husbands to come by and pick them up on the way home from work." The cabbie, upon hearing this exchange, turns to the mother and says, "Come on, lady, tell your daughter the truth. For crying out loud, they're hookers." A brief period of silence follows, and the daughter then asks, "Mommy, do the hooker ladies have any children?" The mother replies, "Of course, dear. Where do you think cabbies come from?" I was talking to my neighbor's 6-year-old daughter, and she said she wanted to be president someday. Both of her parents, liberal Democrats, were standing there, so I asked her, "If you were to be the president, what's the first thing you would do?" She replied, "I'd give food and houses to all the homeless people." "Wow, what a worthy goal," I told her. "You don't have to wait until you're president to do that. You can come over to my house and mow the grass, pull weeds, and sweep my yard, and I'll pay you $50. Then I'll take you over to the grocery store where the homeless guy hangs out, and you can give him the $50 to use toward food or a new house." She thought that over for a second because she's only 6, and while her mom glared at me, the little girl looked me straight in the eye and asked, "Why doesn't the homeless guy come over and do the work and you can just pay him the $50? And I said, "Welcome to the Republican Party." Her folks still aren't talking to me. A woman stopped by unannounced at her recently married son's house. She rang the doorbell and walked in. She was shocked to see her daughter-in-law lying on the couch totally naked. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I'm waiting for my husband to come home from work. I am wearing my love dress." "Love the dress, but you're naked," said the mother-in-law. "My husband loves me to wear this dress," she explained. The mother-in-law left. When she got home, she undressed, showered, put on her best perfume, dimmed the lights, and lay on the couch waiting for her husband to arrive. Finally, her husband came home. He walked in and saw her laying there so provocatively. "What are you doing?" he asked. "This is my love dress," she whispered, sensually. "Needs ironing," he said. A prosecuting attorney called his first witness, a grandmotherly, elderly woman, to the stand. He approached her and asked, "Mrs. Jones, do you know me?" She responded, "Why, yes, I do know you, Mr. Williams. I've known you since you were a boy, and frankly, you've been a big disappointment to me. You lie, you cheat on your wife, and you manipulate people and talk about them behind their backs. You think you're a big shot when you haven't the brains to realize you'll never amount to anything more than a 2-bit paper pusher. Yes, I know you." The lawyer was stunned. Not knowing what else to do, he pointed across the room and asked, "Mrs. Jones, do you know the defense attorney?" She again replied, "Why, yes, I do. I've known Mr. Bradley since he was a youngster too. He's lazy and bigoted, and he has a drinking problem. He can't build a normal relationship with anyone, and his law practice is one of the worst in the entire state. Not to mention, he cheated on his wife with 3 different women. One of them was your wife." "Yes, I know him." The defense attorney nearly died. The judge asked both counselors to approach the bench and, in a very quiet voice, said, "If either of you idiots asks her if she knows me, I'll send you both to the electric chair." A blonde woman walks into an electronics shop. The owner of the shops asks if he can help her, and she points and says, "I would like to buy that television." The owner says, "We don't sell to blondes." So she leaves and comes back to the shop with a red-colored wig on and points and says, "I would like to buy that television." Again, the shop owner replies, "We don't sell to blondes." So again, but a little frustrated, she leaves the shop and comes back with her hair dyed brown. One last time, she points and says, "I would like to buy that television." Once more, the owner replies, "I'm sorry, but we don't sell to blondes." So mildly infuriated, she asks, "How do you know I'm a blonde?" He calmly replies, "That's a microwave." While teaching a class, a teacher trying to teach good manners asked her students the following question. "Michael, if you were on a date having dinner with a nice young lady, how would you tell her that you have to go to the bathroom?" Michael said, "Just a minute, I have to go pee." The teacher responded by saying, "That would be rude and impolite. What about you, Sherman? How would you say it?" Sherman said, "I'm sorry, but I really need to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back." That's better, but it's still not very nice to say the word bathroom at the dinner table. And you, little Johnny, can you use your brain for once and show us your good manners? Johnny said, "I would say, darling, may I please be excused for a moment? I have to shake hands with a very dear friend of mine who I hope to introduce you to after dinner." By the time John pulled into the little town, every hotel room was taken. "You've got to have a room somewhere," he pleaded, "or just a bed, I don't care where." "Well, I do have a double room with one occupant, and he might be glad to split the cost. But to tell you the truth, he snores so loudly that people adjoining rooms have complained in the past. I'm not sure it'd be worth it to you." "No problem," the tired traveler assured him. "I'll take it." The next morning, John came down to breakfast bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. The manager was impressed. "No problem with the other guy snoring then?" "Nope, I shut him up in no time." "How'd you manage that?" "He was already in bed, snoring away when I came in the room," John said. "I went over, gave him a kiss on the cheek, and said, 'Good night, beautiful,' and he sat up all night watching me." A professor, a CEO, and a janitor are in a forest when they discover a magic fairy. The fairy says, "I will give you what you most desire if you do someone else's job for a day." The professor says, "I'll be an elementary school teacher. What could be so hard about teaching a bunch of 6-year-olds how to read?" So he is teleported into a classroom. After a few minutes, all the screaming gets on his nerves, so he throws all his supplies and gives up. The CEO says, "I'll be a waiter. All you do is carry food back and forth. This'll be a breeze." So he's teleported to a restaurant. After about an hour, all the annoying customers drive him insane, so he smashes his plates on the ground and gives up. The janitor says, "I'll be an artist," so he's transported to an art facility. He glues all the classroom supplies and shattered plates to a canvas, then sells it for $1 billion. The fairy asks the janitor how he was so clever. The janitor says, "I got a master's degree in art." An old woman tells her husband that if he walks across the kitchen floor after she mops again, she's gonna kill him. The next time she mops the kitchen floor, he does it again. He gets the kitchen floor dirty and tracks water into the living room. She does as promised. Without saying a word, she goes to their bedroom, gets his pistol out of the closet, and shoots him dead in his recliner. Then she calls 911 and tells them, "I told my husband that if he walks through the kitchen after I mop, then I will kill him. He didn't listen, and I shot him." Emergency dispatch immediately sends an ambulance for the husband and a squad car for the wife. The chief of police hears about the call shortly afterward and thinks it's a rather strange story, so he drives to the house. When he gets there, his officers are still waiting outside. He asks, "Officers, why haven't you gone inside and arrested the woman?" They reply, "Sir, we can't go in now. The kitchen floor is still wet." A librarian is at work at a public library and sees a chicken walk in. The chicken walks up to the counter and says, "Buck, buck, buck, buck." This continues until the librarian passes a book to the chicken, who takes it and pushes it out the door. A few minutes later, the chicken comes right back on, pushes the book up to the counter, and says, "Buck, buck, buck, buck." Again, it doesn't stop, so the librarian finds another book to give the chicken, and again, the chicken pushes the book out the front door. Throughout the day, the chicken keeps coming back, saying, "Buck, buck, buck, buck," and gets a new book to take away. Finally, curiosity gets the better of the librarian, and so she decides to follow the chicken and find out what it is doing with the books. From the front door, the librarian sees the chicken push the book across the road to a park and then towards a pond. The librarian sees the chicken get to the pond, so sneaks closer to see what happens. At the pond, the chicken pushes the book to a lily pad and says, "Buck, buck, buck, buck." From the lily pad, a frog takes one look at the book and says, "Read it." Sister Marianne, who worked for a home health agency, was out making her rounds visiting homebound patients when she ran out of gas. As luck would have it, a Texaco gasoline station was just a block away. She walked to the station to borrow a gas can and buy some gas. The attendant told her that the only gas can he owned had been loaned out, but she could wait until it was returned. Since Sister Mary Ann was on the way to see a patient, she decided not to wait and walked back to her car. She looked for something in her car that she could fill with gas and spotted the bedpan she was taking to the patient. Always resourceful, Sister Mary Ann carried the bedpan to the station, filled it with gasoline, and carried the full bedpan back to her car. As she was pouring the gas into her tank, two Baptists watched from across the street. One of them turned to the other and said, "If it starts, I'm turning Catholic." An old farmer had a wife who nagged him unmercifully. From morning until night, she was always complaining about something. The only time he got any relief was when he was out plowing with his old mule. He plowed a lot. One day when he was out plowing, his wife brought him lunch in the field. He drove the old mule into the shade, sat down on a stump, and began to eat his lunch. Immediately, his wife began nagging him again. Complain, nag, complain, nag. It just went on and on. All of a sudden, the old mule lashed out with both hind feet and caught her smack in the back of the head, killing her dead on the spot. At the funeral, several days later, the minister noticed something rather odd. When a woman mourner approached the old farmer, he would listen for a minute, then nod his head in agreement. But when a man mourner approached him, he would listen for a minute, then shake his head in disagreement. This was so consistent, the minister decided to ask the old farmer about it. So, after the funeral, the minister spoke to the old farmer and asked him why he nodded his head and agreed with the women, but always shook his head and disagreed with all the men. The old farmer said, "Well, the women would come up and say something about how nice my wife looked or how pretty her dress was, so I'd nod my head in agreement." "What about the men?" the minister asked. "Well, they wanted to know if the mule was for sale." An 86-year-old man was waiting in the Double Dutch bar to have some drinks with an old mate. While he was waiting for his mate, a gorgeous girl enters the bar and sits down a few seats away from where he's sitting. The girl is so attractive that the old guy just can't take his eyes off her. After a short while, the girl notices that he's staring at her and approaches him. Before the old guy has any time to apologize for his staring, the girl looks him deep in his eyes and says to him in a sultry tone, "I'll do anything you'd like me to do. Whatever you can imagine in your wildest dreams, it doesn't matter how unusual or extreme it might be, I'm game. I only want $100, and there's one other condition." Completely blown away by the sudden turn of events, the old guy asks her what that one condition is. "Well," she says, "you have to tell me exactly what you want me to do, and you can only use 3 words to describe it." The old man takes a few seconds and considers the offer from that gorgeous girl. He takes out his wallet and gives $100 to the girl. Then he looks her straight in the eyes and says slowly and clearly, "Paint my house." A girl called her boyfriend and excitedly said, "Hey, my mom and dad aren't home." The boy, thrilled by the news, quickly responded, "Whoa, I get it. I'll be there in just 5 minutes." When he arrived, the girl had a different expression on her face. She said, "Hey, hold on a second. You didn't let me finish." Confused, the boy asked, "What do you mean?" The girl explained,
My parents went to visit my uncle, and they've been gone for 2 days. We need to go to the police station to file a missing person report.
A father puts his 3-year-old daughter to bed. His daughter wanted to say a prayer before sleeping, so the father listened. God bless Mommy, God bless Daddy, God bless Grandma, goodbye, Grandpa. The father asked, "Why did you say goodbye, Grandpa?" The little girl said, "I don't know. It just seemed like the right thing to say." The next morning, the family received news that the grandfather had indeed died. The father thought it was just a very lucky coincidence. A few months later, he tucked her daughter into bed, and she said a prayer. God bless Mommy, God bless Daddy, goodbye, Grandma. And of course, the next day, the grandmother died. The father realized that his daughter could predict the family deaths, and that this was no coincidence. A few weeks later, he tucked his daughter into bed, and her prayer was, God bless Mommy and goodbye, Daddy. Her father went into shock. He stood up all night waiting for the worst, and then sunrise came. He decided to just stay at work the entire day to be safe. He stayed at his office until midnight came. When it did, nothing happened. He breathed a sigh of relief. When he came home, his wife asked why he was home so late. I had the worst day of my life, said the father. If you think your day was hard, you won't believe what happened to me. My boss died in the middle of a meeting. A programmer and his project manager board a train headed through the mountains. They can find no other place to sit except for 2 seats right across the aisle from a young woman and her grandmother. After a while, it becomes quite clear that the woman and the programmer are interested in each other as they keep looking at each other. Soon, the train passes into a tunnel, and it is pitch black. There is the sound of a kiss, followed by the sound of a slap. When the train finally emerges from the tunnel, the 4 sit there without saying a word. The grandmother thinks to herself, "It was very rude of that young man to kiss my granddaughter, but I am glad she slapped him." The project manager thinks to himself, "I did not think the programmer was brave enough to kiss the woman, but I wish she hadn't missed him when she slapped me." The young woman thought to herself, "I'm glad the guy kissed me, but I wish my grandmother had not slapped him." The programmer has a satisfied smile on his face and thinks, "Life is good. How often does a guy have a chance to kiss a beautiful woman and slap his project manager at the same time?" A teacher told her young class to ask their parents for a family story with a moral at the end of it and to return the next day to tell their stories. In the classroom the next day, Joe gave his example first. "My dad is a farmer and we have chickens. One day we were taking lots of eggs to the market and a basket on the front seat of the truck when we hit a big bump in the road. The basket fell off the seat and all the eggs broke. The moral of the story is not to put all your eggs in one basket." "Very good," said the teacher. Next, it was Mary's turn to tell her story. "We are farmers too. We had 20 eggs waiting to hatch, but when they did, we only got 10 chicks. The moral of this story is not to count your chickens before they're hatched." "Very good," said the teacher, again very pleased with the response so far. Next, it was Barney's turn to tell his story. "My dad told me this story about my Aunt Karen. Aunt Karen was a flight engineer in the war, and her plane got hit. She had to bail out over enemy territory, and all she had was a bottle of whiskey, a machine gun, and a machete." "Go on," said the teacher, intrigued. "Aunt Karen drank the whiskey on the way down to prepare herself. Then she landed right in the middle of 100 enemy soldiers. She killed 70 of them with the machine gun until she ran out of bullets. Then she killed 20 more with the machete till the blade broke. And then she killed the last 10 with her bare hands." "Good heavens," said the horrified teacher. "What did your father say was the moral of that frightening story?" The child said, "Stay away from Aunt Karen when she's been drinking." A nun, really needing to go to the bathroom, walked into a neighborhood pub. The place was hopping with music and dancing, but every once in a while the lights would turn off. Each time after the lights would go out, the place would erupt into cheers. However, when the revelers saw the nun, the room went dead silent. She walked up to the bartender and asked, "May I please use the restroom?"
The bartender replied, "I really don't think you should." "Why not?" asked the nun. "Well, there is a statue of a naked man in there, and his most private part is covered only by a fig leaf." "Nonsense, I'll just look the other way," said the nun. So the bartender showed the nun the door at the top of the stairs, and she proceeded to the restroom. After a few minutes, she came back out, and the whole place was hopping with music and dancing again. However, they did stop just long enough to give the nun a loud round of applause. She went to the bartender and said, "Sir, I still don't understand. Why did they applaud for me just because I went to the restroom?" The bartender said, growing, "Well, you see," laughing the bartender, "every time the fig leaf is lifted on the statue, the lights go out in the whole place. Now, how about a drink, sister?"
A 10-year-old boy heard some screaming and rustling coming from his parents' room. Thinking there is something wrong, he rushes in and sees his dad sweating and panting, and his mom turning red with embarrassment. "What are you doing?" asked the boy. "Playing poker," replied the dad. "Oh, but what's mom doing here?" The dad thinks about it and replies, "She's my wild card, and you have to have a wild card to play poker." Satisfied, he leaves the room. Halfway down the hall, he hears similar screams and sounds coming from his grandparents' room. So he bursts in and sees his grandpa and grandma both naked and holding each other. "Now what are you doing?" asked the boy. "I'm playing poker," said the grandpa. "And what about grandma?" The grandpa thinks about it and replies, "Well, she's my wild card, and you have to have a wild card to play poker." The boy turns and goes back to his room. The house fills with screaming and groaning. The dad and grandpa run into the hallway and open the little boy's room where the sounds are coming from. "What are you doing in here?" asked the dad. "I'm playing poker," said the boy. "But you need to have a wild card to play poker," said the grandpa. The boy ponders on this and answers, "Not if you have a good hand." The MI5, the CIA, and the KGB are having a competition. 3 small parties of all 3 agencies meet on neutral ground on the edge of a big German forest. For the goal of the competition, they decided that each of their parties should catch a rabbit using their espionage skills. The team that manages to catch the rabbit the quickest wins. First, the MI5 leaves for the forest. When they emerge 8 hours later, they carry a live rabbit in a cage. We posted lookouts around the forest, and after spotting the rabbit, we shadowed it until it showed us its hideout. Then we just placed the cage over the entrance and waited for the rabbit to fall in our trap. Neat and simple. Now it's the turn of the CIA. They leave into the forest and emerge 4 hours later, holding a rabbit which seems to have been shot and badly beaten several times. Still counts. Nobody objects. Now it was the turn of the KGB. The 4 agents disappear into the forest and return after only an hour. But they are not carrying a rabbit, but hold a bear between 2 of the agents. The bear is badly bruised, has a limp, and keeps his gaze to the ground. Absent, he mumbles, "I am a rabbit. My parents were both rabbits." Once upon a time, in a village, a man appeared and announced to the villagers that he would buy monkeys for $10 each. The villagers, seeing that there were many monkeys around, went out to the forest and started catching them. The man bought thousands at $10, and as supply started to diminish, the villagers stopped their efforts. He further announced that he would now buy monkeys at $20. This renewed the villagers' efforts, and they started catching monkeys again. Soon, the supply diminished even further, and people started going back to their farms. The offer increased to $25 each, and the supply of monkeys became so little that it was an effort to even see a monkey, let alone catch one. The man now announced that he would buy monkeys at $50. However, since he had to go to the city for some business, his assistant would now buy on behalf of him. In the absence of the man, the assistant told the villagers, "Look at all these monkeys in the big cage that the man has collected. I will sell them to you at $35, and when the man returns from the city, you can sell them to him for $50. The villagers rounded up all their savings and bought all the monkeys. They never saw the man nor his assistant, only monkeys everywhere.
Now you have a better understanding of how the cryptocurrency market works.
A duke was hunting in the forest with his men-at-arms and servants. He came across a tree. Upon it, archery targets were painted, and smack in the middle of each was an arrow. "Who is this incredibly fine archer?" cried the duke. "I must find him." After continuing through the forest for a few miles, he came across a small boy carrying a bow and arrow. Eventually, the boy admitted that it was he who shot the arrows plumb in the center of all the targets. "You didn't just walk up to the targets and hammer the arrows into the middle, did you?" asked the duke worriedly. "No, my lord, I shot them from 100 paces. I swear it by all that I hold holy." "That is truly astonishing," said the duke. "I hereby admit you into my service." The boy thanked him profusely. "But I must ask one favor in return," the duke continued. "You must tell me how you came to be such an outstanding shot." "Well," said the boy, "first I fire the arrow at the tree, and then I paint the target around it." A priest, a thief, and an engineer were all waiting in line to be executed by guillotine during the French Revolution. The priest was the first to meet his fate. As he stepped onto the platform, the executioner asked, "Father, would you like to meet your maker face up or face down?" After a moment of thought, the priest replied, "My son, if today is to be my last, then I wish to go face up, so I may look toward the heavens and the Almighty as I take my last breath." The executioner agreed and placed the priest on his back in the guillotine. The executioner slowly raised the blade, dripping with the blood of countless previous victims. With the blade at its maximum height, it came crashing down, but at the last moment, it stopped just above the priest's neck, sparing his life. The crowd gasped in awe, and the executioner, believing it to be a divine intervention, released the priest and sent him off to freedom. Next, the thief was brought forward and asked the same question. Seeing the priest's miraculous escape, the thief thought, "Well, I've got nothing to lose," so he also chose to face up. The executioner raised the blade, and once again it plummeted down, only to stop just above the thief's neck. Shocked, the executioner assumed this too was a message from above, and freed the thief. Finally, it was the engineer's turn. The executioner offered the same choice, face up or face down. The engineer, after watching the previous two cases, smirked and said, "Well, given what I've seen, I'm going to go with face up too." The executioner placed him in the guillotine, locked the lunette around his neck, and raised the blade to its maximum. At that moment, the engineer shouted, "Hang on a sec, I think I see the problem." There's this guy who had been lost and walking in the desert for about 2 weeks. One hot day, he sees the home of a missionary. Tired and weak, he crawls up to the house and collapses on the doorstep. The missionary finds him and nurses him back to health. Feeling better, the man asks the missionary for directions to the nearest town. On his way out the back door, he sees this horse. He goes back into the house and asks the missionary, "Could I borrow your horse and give it back when I reach the town?" The missionary says, "Sure, but there's a special thing about this horse. You have to say thank God to make it go and amen to make it stop." Not paying much attention, the man says, "Sure, okay." So he gets on the horse and says, "Thank God," and the horse starts walking. Then he says, thank God," and the horse starts trotting. Feeling really brave, the man says, "Thank God, thank God, thank God, thank God, thank God," and the horse just literally takes off. Pretty soon, he sees this cliff coming up, and he's doing everything he can to make the horse stop. "Whoa, stop, hold on." Finally, he remembers, amen. The horse stops 4 inches from the cliff. The man leans back in the saddle and says, "Thank God." A young man volunteered for military service during World War II. He had such a high aptitude for aviation that he was sent right to Pensacola Naval Air Station, skipping recruit training. The very first day at Pensacola, he solos and is the best flyer on the base. All they could do was give him his gold wings and assign him immediately to an aircraft carrier in the Pacific. On his first day aboard, he took off and single-handedly shot down 6 Japanese fighter planes. Then, climbing up to 20,000 feet, he found 9 more Japanese planes and shot them all down as well. Noting that his fuel was getting low, he descended quickly and came in for a perfect carrier landing on the deck. He threw back the canopy, climbed out, and jogged over to the captain. Saluting smartly, he said, "Well, sir, how did I do on my very first day?" The captain turned around, bowed politely, and replied, "You make one very, very serious mistake."